live here.
We live here.
We live here.
We live here.
A project exploring
race,
Class.
power,
poverty,
Systems and the people they touch.
I'm Emmanuel Berry.
And I'm Tim Lloyd.
And from St. Louis Public Radio.
This is We Live Here.
This is our first podcast, and we're going to spend it telling you a little bit about what this podcast is about.
Yeah, We Live Here is this new thing from St. Louis Public Radio that basically looks at how racial and economic disparities shape who we are, what we think, and how we treat each other.
This is a podcast that's glued together with lots of voices and great storytelling, but We Live Here is not actually just a podcast. There's also going to be cool digital stuff like interactive graphs, videos, in-depth web stories, and events and programming, but we'll get there eventually.
And we're going to be doing this for months, maybe years, actually. We don't know for sure how long yet because this is complicated stuff. We'll be honest, that's our job. And it's likely some of you will get a little uncomfortable sometimes by what we talk about, but we don't want this to be painful.
You know, because we actually want you to keep listening to this show.
Yeah.
And yes, we know racial and economic disparities are nothing new to St. Louis or America for that matter. But let's be real. Like many of you, the last few months have pushed us to rethink those divisions.
So to help you understand why we decided to embark on this project, let's go back a few months.
No justice, no peace. No racist police. No justice, no peace.
It started as a deadly encounter on a hot afternoon between a white police officer and an unarmed 18-year-old black man, Michael Brown.
Over the months that followed, the protests, the looting, the politicking, everyone was asking a variation of this question. Why did this happen?
And people started looking for answers in different places.
I strongly believe that our current education system has become a ladder to systematic poverty.
Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up.
I do not want to be scared to have a son in America. Like, ain't you scared to have one? You know, like, let's be real. What do our sons got to look forward to?
We fight you all day long. We are strong.
Well, first of all, the police is the enemy right now. And like I said, they will continue to be the enemy to me until they can show me that I can trust them. I do not trust the police.
Our courts. Our courts.
We are standing here where we are disproportionately incarcerated, disproportionately uneducated, disproportionately shot down on the streets of this city. We are here because we've had enough.
That was Clifton Kinney, Monica Tomans, David Witt, and Tracy Blackman.
And lots of people say the problems are systemic. But systemic, I mean, that feels like it's so right out of a college seminar.
I took that college seminar,
did you?
actually. Yeah, it was called the White Guilt class, a full lecture hall. I mean, you took that class too, right?
Well, I took something kind of like that. But college lectures are one thing. And what's discussed in them, though, and those ideas often play out totally different in the real world.
I mean, yeah, people live these experiences. And that's what this project, this thing we're calling We Live Here, is about.
It's about figuring out what these so-called systems are, pulling them all apart and seeing where the systems bump up against real life.
At this point, people are probably like, what are these two people
talking
talking
about? We get that a lot,
Yep.
But you made it this far, so let me give you some specifics. We live in one of the most racially divided parts of the country. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but it's something the national media just discovered a few months ago.
And the stories that we're going to tell are rooted in that history of segregation. And that means we're going to be talking about race, but not your typical conversations about race.
Right, there could be stuff about race locked up in your brain that you don't even know about.
So we're going to do stories about how that stuff plays out in real situations, like what kind of job you go after or what kind of job you might actually get or how kids are treated in school.
And maybe even what could make a cop or a kid pull a gun.
So those stories all talk about race, but we're also going to be talking about housing and how in the world we have 90 municipalities in a single county.
And lest we forget healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, how people who live just 10 minutes apart can have drastically different life expectancies.
Jason Purnell, he's a professor at Washington University. He basically gives all of his time to studying these disparities.
I think the biggest gap was between 63106 and 63105, and that was that 18-year gap. really telling the story about where you live matters for your health.
And here's co-pastor of South City Church, Mike Higgins, just before the grand jury decision.
I think Midwestern cities are kind of like dysfunctional families that have issues but don't really want to talk about those issues.
All right, so we've got some issues, but how do we start dealing with those issues?
Well, because I know everything and have all answers. I'm going to say, at least a place to start is with communication. And I'm not just talking about like communication or conversations about race that happen every few years after another racially charged incident.
And let's just be honest here, we are radio folk.
Public radio folk.
So we love having hushed conversations about race.
Race on public radio. Sorry to creep you out. But we don't want to just talk to you through our podcast and through the radio. There are other means. We want this to be a conversation starter. We want you to talk to us in whatever way you want.
Yeah, so if you're into data, send us your numbers.
Or maybe you fancy yourself an artist, send us pictures.
Right, and if you just want to get on your soapbox for a little bit, that's cool with us. Just keep it respectful, and we'll listen.
Because you are a part of this project.
We want you to come along with us as we report, turn over rocks, dig into the data, and sometimes just drive around the region and figure out what's going on.
Obviously, what we're talking about here, these issues, they aren't exclusive to just St. Louis.
Right. Issues of race and inequality are a national problem. And on some level, people are talking about this all over the country.
But, here is where Dred Scott was denied his freedom. Here is the Del Mar Divide. And here is where Michael Brown was shot.
But even though here is a very divided region, we're also bound by those divisions because what happens in one part touches what happens in another. So that's why we're calling this project We Live Here.
Again, thanks for listening, and make sure you check out stlpublicradio.org for more updates on We Live Here.
And most importantly, stay tuned starting next Monday when we explore the jigsaw puzzle that is St. Louis County by taking one long drive up Lindbergh Boulevard.
After that, we'll be sending out new episodes every other Monday, so be sure to subscribe to We Live Here.
There we go. We made it.
We had that hold back at you.
We have to let you know who we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Emmanuel Berry.
And I'm Tim Lloyd. This is St. Louis Public Radio's We Live Here.